I'm glad you decided to join me for this conversation. I think it's interesting. See, what makes this channel so relevant as we talk about DNA test results, perceptions of race and ethnicity, and even nationality, is that we're all a little bit confused because I say things from an American perspective, which confuses a lot of people who are not in America, especially those in Europe and especially those in Spain. So I want to read a comment that inspired this video today. This is a comment I had received on a video I made called MyHeritage DNA test results, are Mexicans biracial? Am I? Response I got from Fabrice Labornia, quote, if I took your definition that a Mexican is not a nationality as we understand it, and Mexican as I understand it too, and suppose that being Mexican means being an ethnic group in a pure genetic meaning of the term, defined by the fact of being a mix of Southern European and Native American people, then imagine that a Native American person immigrates to, say, a Southern European country and have a baby with a local person. Will they be genetically what American people consider to be the definition of Mexican, but it has many meaning to consider to be Mexican, while no one from his parents is, and that is person, do not have neither Mexican culture nor Mexican nationality at all? Could you answer that to help me understand the obscure American thinking, end quote. Hey, and I want to say something. I appreciate the honesty in this question. You know, something you can imagine. You should look through the comments sometimes of my videos. It's a regular thing. Like pretty much every video I ever talk about anything to do with Spain or Mexican in the title, people, it's a given I'm going to get at least one person who says that I'm ignorant and that I don't understand. And you know, while that's definitely true, it's also this communication gap that we've got going on between America's perception of Spain versus Spain's perception of Mexico. I think there's a lot of confusion in there. So just to kind of understand what the question is being asked here, you know, and here's how I present it. The way Americans perceive Mexican people, we don't care about the nationality part about it. When you hear an American talk about a Mexican, they're talking about basically what our perception of Mexican people is. And if you need an easy cue, didn't we all grow up watching the show Saved by the Bell? Remember AC Slater, played by Mario Lopez? Okay, Google that right now. Look up Mario Lopez, AC Slater in Saved by the Bell. He's ethnically, he's what we perceive as a Mexican American. He's born in America, but his parents are Mexican, all right? His DNA, his makeup, when Americans think of someone who's Mexican, they're gonna think of someone like that, a Mexican man that looks like that, who is that mixture of Southern European and the native Central American DNA. You know, it could be a little bit more either way. Apparently my grandma was more like 80% of that Central American DNA and only about 20% of the Southern European, based on my own results, which were 21.6% Central American. But when an American thinks of a Mexican person, that's what they're gonna think of. Someone like Mario Lopez, AC Slater from Saved by the Bell. That's what we're going to think about. And I think that's confusing to the outside world because they see Mexico maybe in the same way they see the United States. That we're very ethnically diverse. We've got every, you know, race and region of the world represented here. And we could say the same about Mexico. But an American doesn't care about that. Americans don't care that there are Scottish people that moved from Scotland and moved to Mexico and then had their own kids there. So now there's Scottish people who speak Spanish in Mexico. We don't care that that happens. We don't care that there's Chinese people who moved 5 generations ago to Mexico and have been continuing to only marry other Chinese people within, and that they're actually Mexican. We don't care. We don't care about the nationality label of Mexican. For us as people of the United States, we don't care. Can I be very clear? We don't care about that. It means nothing to us. All we care about is we recognize that our neighbors to the south, Mexican people, have a certain look. And we recognize that, almost treating it as if it were its own race. And I say they're biracial people, is what I say. Mexicans are biracial. I grew up with my grandma, who is a first-generation Mexican-American, and it was always obvious to me that they're their own ethnic mix, and that ethnic mix kind of became the norm, and that's how people in America perceive Mexicans. Now, if you're an American watching this channel, you're like, wow, Nick, you're really overthinking this. That's common sense what you're saying, but you're really over-explaining it. But see, that's the thing, and that's part of why my channel is interesting and people like to watch my videos, because there's a lot of confusion. So going back to this person asking this question, here's the question again. What if someone who took a DNA test, who's in Mexico, they took a DNA test and it showed they were 100% Central American, according to MyHeritage DNA test is what I took, okay? So it said that they were 100% Central American. You know, we could say that that was the Mayan, Aztec mix, whatever we want to say it was. It was that. They had no European DNA whatsoever. They were Mexican, and 100%. They travel over to Spain. They marry a Spanish woman, and together they have a child. And that woman was 100% Spanish, by the way. Just for the sake of this really weird theory, okay? So the child, in theory, is going to be about 50% Central American, the father being from Mexico, and the mother, let's assume she was 100% Iberian Spanish, which my personal understanding is that's actually pretty rare, because if you're in Spain or Italy, and I've made videos about this, then chances are you're going to be not just Spanish or Portuguese or Italian. You're also going to probably be Jewish. You're probably going to be Middle Eastern. There's going to be that Southern European mix. But for the sake of this almost impossible story, the mother is Spanish. All of her DNA is Iberian. She marries a man from Mexico who is 100% Central American. They marry, they have a child. Is that child Mexican? Well, the ethnic mix that the child would be the same ethnic mix, in theory, as what Americans perceive who Mexican people are. The point of this video is this. Americans don't care about the national label of what a Mexican is. They don't care. When Americans perceive Mexican people, we perceive them as if they were their own mixed race. We treat them as if they were their own race, whether they're born in Mexico and still live there, or whether they come to America and become citizens, or whether they're here undocumented. We don't care. That DNA mix is Mexican. Now, I know it sounds foolish to people outside of America, especially Europe and especially Spain. I know it sounds foolish, but if that's the collective perspective that Americans have about Mexican people, then that becomes our reality. You know, one of the things I often say on my channel is, in our own minds, in our own life, in our own world, we think this is reality. This is how I understand reality. And the people around me receive that as reality, so therefore that's reality. But then, wow, but what about across the ocean? If the rest of everyone over there doesn't perceive it that way, then what we perceive over here isn't real anymore. It's all about the collective experience. So I admit that while our perception of Mexican people may sound ridiculous, and perhaps it is, to people in Europe, at the same time, our perception of your reality sounds ridiculous, because we don't care about the national label of what it means to be Mexican. We're looking at that ethnic mix. And I get this comment a lot, but Nick, why are you Americans so obsessed with DNA? Because we are the melting pot that we are. We feel like adopted children. We want to find our parents. And so yes, it's laughable to say, oh, look, I'm 12% Scottish. How can you be that? Because Scotland it's not a race or whatever it is. That's how Americans are. It's part of our cultures, and that's not going to change. It's only going to get worse as these DNA tests become more popular and more people take them, more people watch videos like I make to understand this. See, here's what I'm saying. There are absolutely miscommunications and misunderstandings that happen simply because Americans have their own culture and perception. So if you find that to be frustrating, stop being frustrated and just listen as I explain it, and know that even if what I say sounds ridiculous, if that's our perception in America, then learn to accept that and move on with your life because it's okay. But I am an American of Mexican descent from a mom who's half Mexican, and I've just lost so many people in Europe when I said that, because again, you're caught up on the thing about my mom being half Mexican when she was born in America and her mother was born here too, right? Americans don't care about Mexican being a nationality. All Americans care about is they treat it as its own ethnic label. Right or wrong, that's how Americans perceive.